Hi guys, a very warm welcome. And in this video, we are going to work on the scenario that we discussed for the VPC. And we are going to implement that scenario on the AWS VPC. So what we need to do is, first of all, you can see on my screen that I have logged in on the AWS console. And from here, we have to go to the virtual private cloud or the VPC. You can, if you have visited the VPC service, you can open up that VPC service from recently visited under recently visited tab. So here you get the virtual private cloud. Or you can go to the services and then scroll for the networking and content delivery services. Click on it. At the right side, you should get the VPC as cloud resources. So I'm just going to click on the virtual private cloud, the VPC, and you would see a new dashboard would appear in the Oregon region. So VPC service is based on the regions, and you have to first select a region where you are going to implement or you are going to create a new virtual private cloud. So I'm going to create it in Oregon. Now this is the entire VPC dashboard. So at the left column, just below the VPC dashboard, under the virtual private cloud, you get all the VPC components. Now what we are going to do, we are going to create our own VPC. So when you click on your VPCs here, you get a default VPC. Now this default VPC, as we discussed in the theory class, is available in every region. This default VPC comes when the AWS account is created. So this is provided by the AWS itself. And from this default VPC only, our instances gets the IP addresses, the private IP addresses. So make sure that we do not make any changes in the default VPC and its components. What we need to do is, we need to create a VPC, our own VPC, which is a non-default VPC. And in that non-default VPC, we need to create two subnets. In one subnet, we are going to create a web instance where we would be hosting our website. And on the second instance, on the second subnet, we would be creating a database instance for the database server. I would recommend to refer the scenario that I discussed, what we want to achieve from this practical. And this way you'll be better able to understand this particular demo. So first I'm going to create a VPC. You just have to click on top right side where the create VPC button is. Just click on it. And then you have to create VPC only. We are creating only one VPC as of now. So generally what happens, guys, is in a particular region, let's say I'm working in Oregon right now. So in this region, we can have maximum 5 VPCs. And in case if you want to extend more VPCs, we can raise a request with Amazon. All right. So I'll go to the VPC only, and here you have to provide the name tag of your VPC. So you can put anything. Let's say I put something like Cloud Institute VPC, or you can put non-default VPC also. It's absolutely your choice. Now the VPC is a network, and we need to provide the IP address range to the VPC. So I will be using IP version 4 only, the IP version 4 CIDR block. And you can refer RFC 1918. You can get it from AWS documentation also. You can search it on the Google also. And that RFC tells you about how you can do the IP addressing on the VPCs. So for the IPv4 CIDR block, I'll use a CIDR block starting with 10.1.0.0/16, which means I am reserving the first two octets, 10 and 1, with 10 and 1. The last two octets are free. So I'm going to create the network with this range of an IP addresses. I'm not going to use IPv6 as of now, and tenancy I'm going to keep it default. Default is a tenancy primarily used for shared VPC resources. However, you can go for a dedicated tenancy also, but in the case of a dedicated tenancy, you have to create an instance in the dedicated environment, which is a costly instance. It has more cost. Generally, when we create our EC2 instances, they are created in the shared environment. So it is up to you. If you want to create a dedicated VPC, then when you create an instance inside this particular dedicated VPC, make sure that is a dedicated instance, not a shared instance. That's the difference only. The tags, we'll leave it blank as of now. We have just, you can see here in the value optional, the name of the VPC has been automatically added. So click on create VPC. And now we have the Cloud Institute VPC that is created with the VPC ID. This VPC ID is generated by the AWS by default. Now we know that VPC is a network, and inside that network we need to create the VPC components. So as per our requirement from the scenario, we need to create two subnets which are part of the VPC only, which are part of the VPC network only. So how we can create a subnet? We just have to click on the subnets. You would find 4 subnets already available. These subnets are part of the default VPC, and each subnet represents the availability zone of the Oregon region. So make sure that please do not make any changes in the default VPC and its components. So as per the scenario, we need to create 2 subnets, subnet 1 and subnet 2. So we'll just click on create subnet. Put a name to, first of all, select a VPC inside which we need to create a subnet. Let's say I select Cloud Institute VPC. And then put a subnet name. Let's say I put something like, or I'll just name it as public subnet. And the availability zone, I'm going to create it in US West 2A. Since subnet is also a network, it's a subnetwork of a VPC, so we need to provide an IPv4 CIDR block to the subnet also. So to the VPC, the IPv4 CIDR block that I provided was 10.1.0.0/16. So the IPv4 CIDR block for the subnet 1 or the public subnet is going to be 10.1, and here in the third octet I'm going to reserve it as 1.0/24 and click on create a subnet. So now I have a public subnet created. It's just a name. Public subnet means that when we will add the instances or resources inside the subnet, it will work in the public environment. That means it will have an internet access. But by just naming the public subnet, it doesn't mean that it will have an internet access. We have to obviously make changes in the routing to have the public network or the internet access on this subnet. Then I'm going to create another subnet for the database, and I'll name it as a private subnet. I'll select a VPC, Cloud Institute VPC, put a name to the subnet, private subnet. Availability zone, try to create the second subnet in a different availability zone for the redundancy purpose. So for the public subnet, I selected 2A. I'm going to select 2B for the private subnet. And the CIDR block, I'm going to select it as 10.1.2.0/24 and click on create a subnet. So now we have a public subnet created, we have a private subnet created, which is part of a VPC. The next thing is to create an internet gateway so that we can have the internet access to the VPC. How we can create an internet gateway? We have to go to the internet gateways here, click on it. Already one internet gateway is created. It is attached to the VPC, the default VPC. I'll create another internet gateway, put a name to it. Let's say I put something like Cloud IGW. IGW stands for Internet Gateway. All right. So I'm going to name it as Cloud IGW, and just you have to click on create internet gateway. Now you can see on the dashboard that the internet gateway is created. We have the internet gateway ID also, but it is in a detached state. So what we need to do is we need to attach this internet gateway manually to our VPC. How we can do that? We have to go to the actions, click on attach to VPC, select a VPC and attach the internet gateway. So now we have the internet gateway attached to our VPC. Remember, one VPC can have only one internet gateway, and this internet gateway that we have created is bidirectional. It can support inbound as well as outbound traffic. Now we have an internet gateway, we have a subnet, we have a VPC. We need to work on the route tables for the routing rules. So I'll go to the route table, and as we discussed that when we create a VPC, we have one main route table automatically created by the AWS. We don't have to create it. So we just have to find the main route table associated with our VPC. So I have a main route table associated with our VPC. So Cloud Institute VPC, and this is the main route table. So I'm just going to name it as main RT, and whatever changes that you do in the main route table, that will be followed by the VPC and its subcomponents. Now what we need to do first is, before making any routing rules in the main route table, we need to do a subnet association so that we can identify that, or we can tell which subnet is going to follow the rules or how the traffic should be forwarded to the subnet. So I'll go to the subnet association after selecting or identifying the main route table for our VPC. Here you would find the subnet associations. Click on it. Go to edit subnet associations. And I'm going to associate the public subnet with the main route table, not the private one. Private subnet has to be isolated from the internet. So I'll just select that and click on Save Association. So here you can see the public subnet is now associated with the main route table, and whatever routing rules that I add, that will be followed by the public subnet itself, or the traffic from the internet would be forwarded directly to the public subnet by the internet gateway. Now we need to add the rules in the route table, so I'll just go to the routes. We have a local route already defined. This local route is primarily used for routing the internal private traffic within the VPC and its components. Like from public subnet to private subnet, the internal flow of traffic keeps on going. So this is by default. We cannot make any changes to it. What we need is, we need to forward the internet traffic towards the public subnet so that our web instance or website is accessible over the internet, and vice versa. So I'll click on edit routes. Here I'm going to add a route. It is for entire IPv4, the default IP, because the traffic from the internet has to be forwarded to the subnets. And similarly, I can add a route for IPv6 also. Let's say if you want to add, you can add a same default route for the IP version 6 as well. Now what is going to be the target? Where exactly it has to be sent? It has to be sent to the internet gateway. So I'll select for the target as internet gateway, and my internet gateway is cloud IGW, and then save the changes. Now once I make these changes, the public subnet which is associated with the main route table would have the access of the internet, or would get the traffic from the internet, and any component that I have created inside the public subnet would be accessible from the internet. But since the private subnet is not associated with the main route table, so if I create an instance inside the private subnet, it will not be accessible from the internet because it is isolated. It is not receiving any traffic from the internet. Alright. So now we are going to test this scenario. I'm going to create two EC2 instances, one in the public subnet and the other one in the private subnet. and then we are going to see if we can access it from a network or not. So now I'm going to launch two instances, one in the public subnet that will act as a web server, and the other one in the private subnet that will act as a database. So I'll name this instance as a web server only, web server, and couple of things here we need to select, and that is the VPC network. Now the VPC network would change. We need to select the subnet also, and apart from that you can select any of the operating system. That is not a concern. I'll prefer to use Windows operating system for a demonstration purpose on this particular instance. So I'll click on browse more AMIs, and here I would find the Windows one. Let me check that. So I've selected Microsoft Windows Server 2016 base, and after selecting that, the instance type is going to be t2.micro because it's the free tier one, and I'll create a new key pair for this instance. So I'll click on create a new key pair, and I'll put it as Cloud Institute .pem file and create a key pair. Now in the VPC section, instead of the default VPC, we have to use our custom VPC. So I'll just click on edit, and I'll select Cloud Institute VPC instead of a default VPC, and the subnet is going to be the public subnet. Auto assign public IP, since we are creating a web instance which will be created in the public subnet, so the public IP we will enable it. By default, when you create an instance in a non-default VPC, in the custom VPC that you create, auto assign public IP is disabled because of a security reason. So we have to manually enable it if we want an access or if we want a public IP assigned to our instance. So in our case, if you want to test the web instance connectivity, the public IP would be required, and that's why we need to enable it. Security group, we can go with the existing security group also. We can create a new security group as well, and we need to ensure that the RDP port is open on this instance so that we can connect to the Windows instance. The storage is going to be 30 GB, and then we'll click on launch instance. Now once the instance is launched, you will observe that the private IP now allocated to this instance ID would be from the CIDR block that we have associated or assigned to our public subnet in the VPC. So when I click on the web server, you will find here under the private IP section that the IP is assigned from the public subnet that start with 10.1.1.104. Similarly, I am going to launch another instance, and that is going to be used for the database. So I'll click on launch instance, and we'll assume that we are going to use this instance as a database instance. So I'll just name it as Cloud Institute DB. And the Windows, again I'm going to select Windows 2016 only, Server Edition. So I'll select Microsoft Windows Server 2016. Just wait a minute. Alright. The instance type is going to be t2.micro, free tier eligible, and the key pair, we can use the same key pair, the Cloud Institute only. That's fine. We can use the same key pair with multiple instances in the same region. And definitely we are going to change the VPC. So I'll just click on edit. We'll select the Cloud Institute VPC. Subnet is going to be the private subnet. Auto assign public IP, we need to disable it because it's a database instance. It is isolated from the public network. So we do not require to assign a public IP to our instance. So we'll keep it disabled. Security group, again the port is going to be RDP and the 30 GB storage will be attached. Just click on launch instance. And this time, once the instance is launched, you are going to find that the private IP allocated to this instance would come from the private subnet CIDR block. Let's view it. So here it is. The private IP address is from 10.1.2.22. This is coming from the private subnet CIDR block. And it does not have a public IP because we have disabled it. We have not enabled the public IP allocation. So now we have two instances created, one as a web server and the other one as a database. So I'll just name it as a database as of now, DB, for better identification. Now since the web server is created in the public subnet and as per the networking that we have created, we should be able to connect to the web server. So I'll try to connect to the web server, obviously from the public IP because I'll try to connect it from the public network. So I'll copy the public IP, open up the RDP, open it, and here I'm going to copy paste the public IP. Username is going to be the administrator and password we need to generate. So select your instance, click on connect, go to the RDP client, click on get password and provide your key pair. The Cloud Institute key pair should be in downloads. Yeah, here it is. We got the password, decrypt the password, copy the password to the clipboard and then paste it to the RDP client, which is here. Click on OK and let's wait for the connectivity. So we got an authentication, so that means we should be able to connect to the web server from our public network. Here you can see. Now similarly, if I try to connect to the database instance, first of all we do not have a public IP, and secondly if I try to connect it from the private IP also, I'll not be able to do that. Let's try it. So I'll just open up the RDP, paste the private IP, click on connect, and it will try to initiate the remote connection, but that will not happen. It will not be successful. So the connectivity will be denied. Obviously, first of all, the internal IPs are not accessible from the public network, and secondly, there is no route in the VPC. And if I move to the web server that I created in the public subnet, you can see that I'm able to connect to it. Here at the top right side, you get all the instance details. So this was the demo, guys, based on the scenario that we covered in the previous video. Thanks for watching.